Everybody, welcome to our March and April wrap up. Today is May 2nd.
And we hope you had a good couple of months since we've been last talking together.
So last week at church, it was the teenagers coming of age mass, and the first girl who had her coming of age ceremony read this poem by Mary Oliver that I wanted to share with you guys. Who made the world? Who made the swan, the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down? Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes? Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know what exactly a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it your plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What do you take away from that poem, Matt?
I take away from that poem that it really describes what a coming of age is. What about you?
Well, the last line specifically sticks out to me. Um, doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is your plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It's asking us what we want to do with our life. And as we just lost a close friend, I think it's important to reflect on this because our friend Stacy Harris died earlier this week in a car accident.
Which is always a memoir of why I should recommend when I see people on the road to be very careful.
So yes, we're really going to miss Stacy. She was one of my college roommates and I grew very close to her over the years. She was a lot of fun, and our favorite memory of her recently was when we had a karaoke party at her house either this summer or the summer before, and I'm going to miss her a lot. Last night we watched The Lorax, which is a movie that we watch around Earth Day every year, and the question that we wanted to pose to the rest of you is, what are things that we can do to save the planet? What do you think?
Because as we said before in Dr. Seuss, unless something's going to change, it's never going to get better. So I think what we should do to help our planet, especially with the crisis that we have in Iran right now, is think less about the people who we hate and start thinking about cleaner energy and save some water and maybe really get people understanding about recycling. Now, I want you to understand that we have a brighter picture here for you now because we have a brand new computer, a laptop here that I got just this week. So if you think this is a little different, but you can see some improvement, just give us a text on the YouTube page and just let us know.
So the next thing we're going to do is talk about 3 local theater productions that we saw in March and April. The first, well, actually, if we really want to go in order, the first one would be The Secret Garden. We saw that on March 13th at the City Theater in Biddeford. We got these tickets for Christmas from
My mom.
his mom. We had previously seen The Secret Garden at the Palace Theater in uh honestly, I don't remember. Oh, May 2016. It's based on a 1900s book by Frances Hodgson Burnett, which I read last year, and I highly recommend the book. I gave it 5 stars. Who was your favorite character in The Secret Garden?
I think my favorite characters in The Secret Garden was the little girl who learned about The Secret Garden, and I also liked Mary And I also like the Lily played by Mia Love.
Mary is the main character.
She is the main character.
So my favorite characters are Dickon, the guy that tends to one of the guys who tends to the garden, and then I love the little boy Colin.
Mm-hmm.
What were your favorite songs in the Secret Garden?
Come Into My Garden was one of them.
My favorites were How Could I Ever Know, Lily's Eyes, Round Shouldered Man, and Show Me the Key.
And then the next play we saw was Little Woman.
We saw this on March 22nd at Portland Players in Portland with our neighbor Kathleen, because Kathleen and I read Little Women for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR to go along with the Friends episode, the one where Monica and Richard are just friends, where Monica and Joey have a book club and they switch books. Joey reads the Little Women and Rachel reads The Shining. Who was your favorite character in Little Women?
In this version of Little Woman, I think I liked Beth, who did a good job, and I also liked Joe.
So Joe was played by Kelly Mosher and Beth was played by Caroline Chung. My other favorite character was R. Taylor Krause, who played Lori, and then Ryan Lane, who played Professor Behar. Oh, and I forgot to say that my other favorite character besides Mary and Dickon in the Secret Garden, besides Colin, was Archibald Craven. So the final theater production we saw in March and April was Anastasia at the Lyric Music Theater. Little Women, and the tickets to Little Women and Anastasia were gifted to me from my parents for my birthday last year. So thank you to them for the present. So this is the first time we had seen Anastasia the musical, but I first saw the movie when it came out in 1997. Back then, it was produced by Fox, 20th Century Fox, but in 2019, Disney bought out 20th Century Fox. So now Anastasia is a Disney princess when she was not originally. Anastasia is actually based on a real Russian princess from history. Her family was actually a real Russian family that died in the war in Russia in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and I actually read a book about Anastasia and her sisters prior to seeing the play. I read the book in January. It's called The Romanov Sisters, and it was recommended to me by Olive over at A Book Olive. If I can find a video that she talks about that book in, I will link it in the description. So what were your favorite songs in Anastasia?
Well, let me take over the program. I think in Anastasia, a couple of my favorite numbers included Learn to Do It and also Journey to the Past.
My favorite songs are A Rumor in St. Petersburg, In a Crowd of Thousands, Land of Yesterday, and Once Upon a December. The notable performances in this production were by Kim Cha, who played Anya, Jess Waddell, who played Countess Lily, Rook Hines, who played the Dowager Empress, and Raya Redding, who played Little Anastasia. For TV show episode reviews, we're going to start with Serious Issues in the Media series. We bought back this series for the months of January through December through February. So the episodes that we watched for March were the themes were Body Image, Full House. We watched the episode of Full House where DJ goes on a crash diet to get ready for Kimmy's pool party. The reason why I connected to DJ in this episode was not because of the dieting plotline, but because of the self-doubt she has with comparing herself to her friends. And all of the because I dealt with a lot of that kind of self-doubt when I was growing up watching this episode because I was a teenager back then who was insecure about herself. But obviously I'm not like that anymore. What did you think about this episode of Full House?
It was just a kind of not what she should have done to change her body image, because going through all that exercise and trying to just fit in a swimsuit, that just tore it apart.
The next serious issue that was discussed in a TV episode that we watched was gun safety. We watched the episode of Family Matters where Laura's friend gets shot, and then she doesn't feel safe and she has to buy a gun. Actually, she gets threatened first, and then Steve is with her trying to protect her, but then one of her other classmates approaches her to buy a gun from him for her safety, but Steve doesn't want her to buy a gun. And then Steve and Laura see um see their other friend Josie gets shot, and I really felt bad in that moment for Laura because her safety was even more threatened because her friend was put in danger when she was shot, and her friend ended up having to move away. What did you think of that episode?
It was sad about the shooting, and I really think that was a lot of discussion issues based on what people think about black people, especially since it was a Chicago neighborhood.
I also liked the public service announcement that Jaleel White and Laura's actress did at the end about gun safety with the rap song.
And especially since that was the Jaleel White who is his real self instead of Urkel.
Right.
At the very end.
The next serious issue that we watched an episode about was importance of how kids should be treated in school. So we have been watching Family Ties. We are specifically talking about season 5, episode 1, Be True to Your Preschool, but we have also watched we also started to watch season 6 because Courtney Cox appears in it as Alex's girlfriend Lauren, who is a psychologist. And what's interesting about that particular episode with Courtney Cox in it, where she first appears, is that in her psychology project lab, there is a chimpanzee. And I was thinking back to the episode of Friends with Marcel, and I just read so many complaints in the Friends book that I read that I used to have that talks about behind the scenes interviews, and they complained about working with the monkey Marcel. So I was really curious watching that episode about how different that situation was on Family Ties, and I wish I could talk to Courtney Cox and ask her that question. But what in this particular episode of Family Ties that we watch for serious issues in the media, it focuses on Alex and his little brother Andy. He goes to preschool and he gets involved where he shouldn't get involved, and he takes his brother out of school when he isn't allowed to, and his parents really get angry. He basically tries to be the teacher when he's not the teacher, which makes the teacher really upset. And he doesn't think the preschool is a good fit for him. What did you think of this episode of Family?
I agree that Alex was trying to fit in too much for being a big brother to his younger brothers. But yeah, only certified teachers can really be the ones who should be teaching those little kids because they're certified, they train. Just imagine if you were going to college and you want to start a profession. Think of what you'd have to go through.
Okay. The next TV show episode that we watched over the course of March and April was the crossover episode of Step by Step, where Jaleel White guest stars as Steve Urkel. It's the crossover between Family Matters and Step by Step, where Steve Urkel comes to visit Washington State because he is Mark Lambert's science fair partner. what always confused me about this episode, even when I was watching it on TGIF, was like the logistics of it. Like, I, Steve Urkel is from Chicago, and the Lamberts are from Washington. Like, I don't understand how the logistics could work about how that episode could work, but the age difference bothers me even more because I feel like Mark Lambert is supposed to be in 7th grade or 8th grade, and that Steve Urkel and Laura Winslow are in like 10th grade or maybe even 11th. So, do you feel the age gap is different, or what do you think the age gap is between Steve Urkel and Mark Lambert?
It could be the difference between what's in middle school and high school, which is a little bit of an age gap with most kids compared to. But I thought Urkel did his show off dance pretty well.
In this episode, Carol and Mark Lambert's second daughter, Alex, who is played by Stacey Lakin, is supposed to go to her I think her 8th grade dance, and her date ditches her, so Steve actually takes her to the dance which I thought was really nice of him to do. And it's another situation where Steve Urkel helps out the middle daughter, because in the crossover episode of Full House, Steve Urkel actually gives Stephanie advice about not feeling so awkward about wearing glasses. So an adult cartoon that we started watching this month was BoJack Horseman, which I heard about through Phantom Strider's channel, because he and Miss Mojo has actually talked about it in their episodes about in their videos about serious issues in the media, because BoJack Horseman is an adult cartoon about a aging 90s TV star. He was on this TV show called Horsing Around, where a horse was raising 3 human children, and one of the kids from the TV show comes back as an adult to ask him for help. The episode that we watched, which was called Prickly Muffin, was the episode where Sabrina, who is the girl who was from the TV show, comes back into her life, come back to BoJack. Like, BoJack is an alcoholic, and he is in the process of writing his own memoir. So his manager, Princess Caroline, who is a cat, hires a human ghostwriter named Diane Nguyen to help ghostwrite the memoir. And I really like the dynamic between Diane and BoJack in the episodes where they're talking about writing the memoir. What did you think of BoJack Horseman?
Well, so far this is a Netflix original series, which you can't get on television on cable, but has a lot of interesting facts that some are animals compared to our humans, and then they act like us.
Yeah, the voice acting in the show is really great too.
It is.
Will Arnett does BoJack Horseman's voice. I can't remember the other actors off the top of my head. I do not have the list in front of me. So for movie reviews, one of the first movies that we watched at the very beginning of this month was As Good as It Gets, which was recommended to me by my mom. This movie came out in the late 90s, and it stars Helen Hunt and Jack Nicholson from The Shining. And Jack Nicholson plays a writer named Melvin who has OCD, who comes across as really rude and really offensive to other people, because he has a neighbor who is gay that he really says really offensive things to. And it's kind of really mean to his dog also.
And he also goes out on times where he is going out to restaurants and really describing how he treats the staff. It's very inappropriate, and everybody could be watching what he's doing.
We gave this movie 7 out of 10. The acting is good. Melvin does a really nice thing because he helps Helen Hunt's character, who is, I forget the character's name that Helen Hunt plays, but her son is really sick. So Melvin does a really nice thing for her to help pay for his medical bills. And also the neighbor's dog is very cute. It reminds me of the dog Stella in Modern Family. So we gave that movie 7 out of 10.
We also saw the movie Anchorman, and this is one of the movies from Will Ferrell.
So this movie came out in 2004, and it also stars Steve Carell from The Office, Paul Rudd from Friends. They played the weatherman Brick and the sportscaster Brian Fantana. And then Veronica Corningstone was played by Christina Applegate. And Christina Applegate talked about the behind the scenes makings of this film in her memoir, which I read in March and gave 5 stars to, called You with the Sad Eyes, which I do not have with me. It's in the other room. But I highly recommend that. She not only talks about Married with Children and Anchorman, but she also talks about her diagnosis and her activism for multiple sclerosis, which is the disability that she has.
And during this movie, you can get a taste of what news was like more like in the 1970s and 80s. And these guys do not appreciate the anchor with Veronica.
No, they are really mean to Veronica, and they represent what is called misogynistic viewpoints of women, which I hated. And I think that really affected Ron's ability to be able to have a romantic relationship with Veronica Corningstone, because he wanted to love her, but at the same time he also was really mean to her. So I didn't really like that. The next movie that we watched was Cruel Intentions.
And this is set in New York.
So this movie reminds me of a show I have not seen that I have heard a lot of people talk about called Gossip Girl, because it is much like that show, set at an elite New York City private high school. It stars Selma Blair. Her character is the one who, the twins in this movie, who are played by Ryan Philippe and who's the other?
I forgot.
Sarah Michelle Gellar from Buffy.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Philippe play the 2 twin siblings who are trying to seduce the character who is played by Selma Blair, who I can relate to because I was so easily naive and manipulated as a teenager when I was first getting into relationships, and even when I was first in college. But Reese Witherspoon is also in this movie, and she plays the daughter of the dean of students of the private school who Ryan Philippe's character is trying to fall in love with. And on the set of this movie, Reese Witherspoon and Ryan Philippe started dating, and they dated until 2006. I really loved this movie. I really thought that Ryan Philippe's character was really mean in a lot of ways. I didn't really care for him much. So I think he got what he deserved at the end. I don't want to spoil it in case you guys want to see it. I gave it 8 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, 10. It's a good chemistry between the actors in that, but getting someone to pay for seducing, that just is a little bit awkward. Puts you in the situation when you start to learn about dating and relationships. Now we're going to talk about Definitely Maybe.
This movie came out in 2014, and it stars Abigail Breslin from Little Miss Sunshine and My Sister's Keeper, and Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds plays a divorced dad, and he comes up with a game for his 11-year-old daughter Maya, who's played by Abigail Breslin, who basically to try to figure out who her mother is, how they fell in love with, and like the parents are in the middle of a divorce, and when he finally gets around to telling her how he met her mother, she's like, "Oh, but your divorce is so sad. What was the happiest thing that came out of it?" And he says, "You." And that was so sweet. Sorry to spoil the ending, but I just think that is so sweet. And this is a different way to think about the TV show How I Met Your Mother as well. But I love the ending for this movie much better than How I Met Your Mother. We will discuss How I Met Your Mother at a different time. However, what would you give definitely maybe for a rating? I don't think I wrote that down in our notes.
You gave it 8 out of 10 stars.
Okay. The next movie that we watched was Fever Pitch with Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon was in this movie before he started his late night talk show. This movie is about the Red Sox. Jimmy Fallon's character plays an obsessive Red Sox fan named Ben, and he falls in love with Drew Barrymore's character. Her name's Lindsay. And basically, this game takes place during the 2004 World Series. And something really fun is that my theater teacher from Peacock Players, Scott Severance, is in this movie as one of the people who is in the stands watching the baseball game. So if you are watching those scenes, you will see him. He is in a red shirt. So that is pretty awesome that I actually have a connection to this movie because I know Scott. This movie easily can get a 10 out of 10, but I think we gave it an 8. But it can get a 10 definitely.
This is about not only the effects of Boston, but also city life and obsession on something, which we've come to figure out when you are obsessed with something and it takes away from your relationship, that gets a little bit frustrating.
The next movie that we wanted to talk about is Leap Year with Amy Adams. Amy Adams is one of our favorite actresses. She's also really good in Enchanted, where she plays the Princess Giselle. In this movie, she plays a woman who tries to reverse the whole idea of the man proposing to the woman and proposing to her fiance on Leap Day, but she gets stuck in Ireland. And the thing I liked the best about this movie was in similar movies like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Mamma Mia, Angela's Ashes, Eat, Pray, Love. I love the cinematography of Ireland, and it makes me really want to go. And you have been to Ireland before.
Oh, yes. And I've even drawn in our art class a couple of pictures that relate to being in Ireland.
And if you come to our art opening on June 5th at Double House, you will hopefully get to see some of those pictures. We haven't set up the exhibit yet, so we don't know what exact pictures are going to be in there, but we're going to start planning that out very soon. Just for the cinematography, I gave this movie 10 out of 10. I don't remember what you gave it.
I gave it 9 out of 10.
The next movie that I wanted to talk about is a movie that Kathleen and I watched last week. It's called Postgrad. It came out in 2009. It stars Alexis Bledel from Gilmore Girls as a girl who has a similar character archetype to Rory Gilmore about how she plans her whole life out about going to an Ivy League school and getting a specific job after college. And she goes out for this big job at a publishing house in New York City, but does not get it right away. She eventually does end up getting it. But I just love the family dynamic. She has a mother who is played by Jane Lynch from Glee. She was also on Friends and as the real estate agent when Monica and Chandler are buying the house in Westchester. And then Michael Keaton plays her dad. Her grandmother, Maureen, was played by Carol Burnett, and she was hysterical. And I can't remember the name of the little brother's character, but he was cute and he was really obsessed with like racing cars and boxcar derbies. And there's a great scene at the end where they're watching him race the boxcar derbies, and I really liked this movie. It definitely reminded me about how I felt with just getting out of college and looking for a job and being on my own for the first time and everything. So it was a it was a really easy movie for me to relate to because I was in her shoes when this movie was first coming out in 2009. And I gave it 10 out of 10.
Now, the next movie that we're going to discuss is the movie called Stand By Me. This was one of the movies that we were watching because of the memory of Rob Reiner, who died last fall.
He died during Christmas because he was shot by his son, and that made me really sad.
Mm-hmm. So this is a dynamic on back in the late 1950s. These group of boys who were all on an adventure in Oregon where they were searching for what was it, Janine? It was
They were searching for the dead body of a kid in their hometown who died, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. So it goes on an adventure from overnight to the next day, and they have to face some challenges because they were boys. But this was all based on one guy's memory, and it dates back from beginning to end in the modern period, which was 1986, which I could tell from when they had the IBM computer at the very end. So the brilliant cinematography in Oregon made this worth seeing, and we gave this 7 out of 10 stars.
Fat phobia in this movie has not aged well. The cinematography that he was just talking about in the scene where they're hiking along the train tracks is beautiful. Yes, we gave this book 7 out of 10. And a book that has similar vibes to Stand By Me is Friedrich Bachmann's release from last year, My Friends. In this book, we have a similar main female character who is an artist, much like Gordy, who is Stephen King's self-insert. Stephen King's character, Gordy, is a writer, and our main female character, named Louisa, is a painter. And she's obsessed with finding the story behind a painting of two teenagers from the 1800s and like what the background behind that painting is. I gave this book 4.5 stars, and if you like Stand By Me, you should definitely read this book.
Okay, the next movie is called The First Wives Club.
We watched this movie to honor the death of Diane Keaton, who died around Thanksgiving time last year, and this movie focuses on a group of divorced women who are played by Diane Keaton, Goldie Hawn, Bette Midler from Hocus Pocus, and who was the other one? There were 4 ladies: Diane Keaton, Goldie Hawn, Bette Midler. Who is the 4th one?
I forgot the 4th one.
Yeah, me too. I don't have my phone in front of me. It's on the charger. But yeah, this is a great movie about female friendship. So we highly recommend you to watch this with your your own female friend group, and maybe you will see yourself in some of these characters. I personally cannot relate to any of these characters because I've never been through a divorce, but I just think all of these characters were really great in their own way. The next movie that we watched was The Wild Robot. This is an animated movie that came out a couple of years ago, and it's based on a middle grade book series by Peter Brown, which I am almost done with reading. I just need to read one more book. The voice acting in this movie is really good. The robot was voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, who was in 12 Years a Slave, which I still need to see. That won the Oscar several years ago. Who else did the voices in that movie?
I don't know the rest of them.
Yeah, we need to look it up again, but great voice cast, and the audiobook is also really well narrated. I listened to the audiobook last year around this time, and I gave it I gave it 5 stars, and we gave this movie 9 out of 10. A movie we attempted to watch but couldn't complete because the DVD kept skipping was It's Complicated. We originally saw this movie in the theater when it first came out in 2009. It stars Meryl Streep from The Devil Wears Prada, and Alec Baldwin from 30 Rock, and Steve Martin from Little Shop of Horrors. And it's a love triangle because Meryl Streep's character is in the middle of divorcing her husband, who is played by Alec Baldwin, and she falls in love with her architect, who is trying to build an addition on her house, and he's played by Steve Martin. And I'm not a big fan of this movie.
No, I wasn't either because of the complicated relationship, and we gave it 4 out of 10 stars.
The next thing we're talking about is fan theories for Frozen 3. Frozen 3 is supposed to come out next year, and we're really excited about it. Toy Story 5 is coming out in June. I haven't heard many fan theories about that, but I have heard that it's supposed to be based on Jessie's backstory, so I'm excited. So in the fan theories video that I watched about Frozen 3 for research for this video, the theories I agreed with the most were the ones about Anna being the Queen of Arendelle and starting her own family. And also, one thing I would personally like to see is Honey Marin and Elsa become a couple, because I know most fans of Frozen do not want Elsa to have a relationship that's romantic, but I just think that Honey Marin and Elsa had really good chemistry in Frozen 2, so I do hope they end up getting together. What about you?
Well, I heard in Frozen 3 that at the very plot line, Anna and her bride, Kristoff, are going to get married.
Right.
So I'd like to see where that goes, too.
Okay, the next fan theory we're going to talk about is from Seinfeld. And the fan theory is George's brother killed himself. George's brother is mentioned in the 2 episodes of Seinfeld that we reviewed, which we watched for this review, which are the suicide where Jerry's neighbor attempts suicide, and George is about to go on vacation, so he goes to see a psychic, and his psychic predicts that something is going to happen with a woman named Pauline, and Pauline is like his brother's ex-girlfriend or ex-wife or something. And basically, he tells the brother about this in a scene that we don't see on the screen, and the brother kills himself because of that. And obviously he feels guilty, and then he finds out that the ex-girlfriend has a kid. So in the episode that we had previously watched that has Maggie Wheeler in it, where he goes on a blind date with Elaine's friend Cynthia, who is played by Maggie Wheeler, he is determining if he wants to help raise his brother's kid. And then in the parking space,
this is where George comes back after coming back from an errand, but going up to the apartment, he thinks he has a space. But what happens is he tries to back in, another person tries to get into the parking space, and then it turns into a fight.
Yeah, I didn't care for this episode very much. I think I gave both of these episodes 4 stars on IMDb. They're not as funny as some of the other Seinfeld episodes that we have watched so far for season 3. So for Friends fan theories, the first fan theory I wanted to talk about is not really a fan theory because it's something you can blatantly see in the episodes. I don't think that these videos that I watch on YouTube are like, I don't think these people edit their scripts very well, because you would see that this is not a theory, that you can see this kind of go along throughout the episodes. But this theory focuses on Alice, who is Frank Jr.'s home economics teacher, who becomes his girlfriend and then wife. She is played by Deborah Jo Rupp from That 70s Show, who plays Kitty Foreman, and I just can't get out of my head that she also plays Eric Foreman's mother when she plays such a disgusting character on Friends. Basically, if you watch Friends from a current standpoint, you will be able to tell that Alice is a sexual predator who is grooming Frank Jr., who is Phoebe's half brother, who is 17 or 18, or maybe he's even 16. But this is their age gap relationship is like made to be a punchline throughout the whole entire show, and it really shouldn't be made to be like that. I think that if Friends were rewritten for today, this plot line would not exist, and neither would Ross dating his student Elizabeth. And honestly, I don't think Monica and Richard's relationship would be in a show either. So, in a conversation that Phoebe and Alice have when Phoebe is going to, like, name the twins, she says, "Oh, you can name one of the twins. What would you name one of the twins?" And she says, "Cougar." And that's an immediate reference to the age gap between Frank Jr. and Alice, and how Alice is almost 50 and her brother is a teenager. So, what do you think?
Well, where you say it's a sexual predator, that does get a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
Now, the next theory we want to discuss is about Phoebe and why we think she's a genius.
So yeah, in a few different episodes of Friends, you can see that Phoebe is not only street smart, but she is also like really smart despite the fact not having a formal education. She knows French and Italian. She dated a foreign diplomat in one episode who Monica has to translate for her when they go on a double date. She gets in a debate with Ross in the one where Heckles dies about evolution. And at the end of that argument, she's like, haha, that was funny. And she basically was saying that she was messing with him. So basically, she was manipulating that conversation so she could be in charge of it. And she also is a good observation of people's behaviors and moods from what I've seen. What makes you think Phoebe is a genius?
It's based on the fact that she can learn a lot from the fact that she didn't have an education, but also the fact that she was once homeless.
So there's another theory about Phoebe that I have heard that says she is actually not part of the Friends group. She is actually still homeless and looking in the window of Central Perk at the other 6 characters and wishing she was in a group like that where she could feel included and not so alone. Marta Kaufman has said that this theory is disturbing and sad, but she did not say if it was true. So if it is true, that would just ruin the whole entire show for me, because it would say that Phoebe is basically dreaming the whole show up and living in a fantasy world, wishing she was with people who cared about her. And this also means that her brother doesn't exist, that her birth mom doesn't exist, that her grandma who dies doesn't exist. So that theory is too dark for me. The next fan theory for Friends we wanted to talk about is Monica was part of weight loss drug testing. This theory focuses on how Monica goes through rapid weight loss from the episodes where they're in high school with the Thanksgiving dinner and flashbacks to the pilot episode. I mean, this is obviously a costume thing for me because in the flashback episodes, Monica is wearing a fat suit, and obviously Courtney Cox is skinny and pretty. But this theory states that Monica was tested for weight loss drugs during the time that I stated, and I looked up what the popular drugs were for weight loss at that time, and they are called fen and Redux. So there's another theory that could tie into this theory about Monica and Joey being drug addicts, and this can connect to the theory about Monica being on weight loss drugs because maybe after she got done with the test, she maybe got addicted to the weight loss drugs, and she had to hide them from other people, so that's why she's such a neat freak. And also in the episode where Chandler finds her secret closet, I think that could also be like where she keeps her drug stash. But as you see in that episode when Chandler actually opens the closet, it's just where she puts all the junk that she has no place to store. The last Friends fan theory that we wanted to talk about is about Monica being Ross's half sibling. Before I watched this YouTube video, I actually heard about this theory in another YouTube video that Miss Mojo put out in 2023. And basically, this theory states that Monica is not Jack Geller's daughter, and the reason why Judy resents her so much is because she was an affair child. So the people who were speculating in the Miss Mojo video were saying that her affair partner might have been Richard, and that ruins their relationship for me. And if this is actually true, which it isn't, but if it were, then I really wish that Jack had said something in the episode at his birthday party about Monica and Richard dating, because in that scene he looked super uncomfortable about them being together. And then, I mean, Judy's reaction to them dating is really telling, because if it's true that Richard was her affair partner, you can see why that would be a problem. But other people who were commenting in the comment section on a recent Friends theory video that I watched where this theory shows up is that she is actually a child from an affair from Jack's first marriage, who Jack is raising because his ex-wife did not want to raise her. I actually like that theory because it checks out with how Jack is a little bit more caring and nurturing towards Monica than Judy is. You can see this in the episode where the grandmother passes away, and you can see them talking at the kitchen table about how he wants to have a 7-gun salute for his funeral at sea because he was a veteran of the Vietnam War or the Korean War, one of those two. And then the one where she breaks up with Richard and he comes over to the apartment to comfort her after the breakup. And then you can tell that he really feels guilty about how he favors Monica over Ross, because in the episode where he covers up the boxes in the garage when they're moving out of the house, the childhood home, he ends up giving her the car because he feels guilty about how he treated for Monica all this time. What do you think? Do you think that Monica and Ross are birth siblings or siblings from another marriage?
To me, I think they were from the same marriage.
So do you think that Jack and Judy could have had Monica like at a rough time in their marriage?
It might have been where they were kind of going through rough periods.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to do it for this video.
So this is part 1. Part 2 is going to be about the book reviews, and that's coming up in the next part. So stay tuned for the next part because we're going to be talking about books.
Have a good day.